This is episode 17 with Miss Morgann Mitchell. Welcome to the Sports Business Classroom audio experience. I'm your host, Sergio Millis, and each week I'll bring you an inspiring person or message to help you discover how to break in and succeed in sports and life. Thanks for spending some time with me today, and let the experience begin. This episode is brought to you by Sports Business Classroom 2020, an immersive sports business training and educational experience unlike any other, taking place July 12th through the 18th in Las Vegas during Summer League. Registration for the program opened last week, and ladies and gentlemen, you do not want to miss this. It truly is a one-of-a-kind learning opportunity for anyone interested in the business of basketball and jobs in sports in general. I mean, if you dream of one day landing a job in sports, are passionate about learning, or simply want to show the right people that you have what it takes to get a job in sports, this program is for you. Sports Business Classroom combines the best of all worlds into a single package. It's great academics, it's hands-on experience, it's immersion in the Las Vegas Summer League, and it's interaction with some of the best minds working in and around the NBA. You can check out all the details for the 2020 program at sportsbusinessclassroom.com, and if you're at all interested, make sure to apply as soon as possible, as this program will fill up. Again, the URL is www.sportsbusinessclassroom.com. Today's guest is Morgann Mitchell, Assistant Social Media Manager for Turner Sports. In her role, she's in charge of running NBATV's Snapchat, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook channels. She's also in charge of developing the right content for NBATV's social channels for the NBA's tentpole events, such as All-Star Weekend, the NBA Draft, and NBA Summer League. In this episode, we discuss the necessary skills to succeed in this role, what it's like to cover the NBA for NBATV, and advice she has for people looking to get into the business of sports. This episode was so much fun. Morgann is great. She provided a ton of insight, and I walked away with a bunch of takeaways that I'll be implementing into my own life. Without further ado, I give you NBATV's Miss Morgann Mitchell. Morgann, welcome to the show. It's great to have you.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Now, before we get into some serious stuff, I was doing a little bit of research, and I found out that you speak French. Do you speak fluent French?
No, I'm not fluent. I'd say I'm conversational, aka I went to France and was able to get around.
Okay.
But I was definitely better in college. It's just, you graduate and then you don't use it and it doesn't flow as easily.
Can you say something in French for us?
Bonjour, comment ça va?
Very nice. Very nice. That's more French than I can speak. So that's impressive. I grew up in Canada, where everybody's taught to speak French in school. But,
yeah,
I
you
remember
should be
none
fluent.
of it. I remember none of it. I speak Spanish. So Spanish is my second language.
Even though you're from Canada, love it.
Oh yeah. A lot of strange stuff going on there, which we'll get into at some point. But I thought we'd start off with you telling us a little bit about, how you grew up, where you grew up, and how you developed your love for sports.
Yeah, so I grew up mostly in Minnesota. The elementary school I went to, we had like a sports camp. So literally after school, everyone played everything. And it's Minnesota, right? So you have all the winter sports, and then when it gets hot, everyone is just trying to be outside as much as possible. So doing that. And then my dad played basketball. My mom also played basketball. And when I moved to Georgia from Minnesota when I was around 12, that's the first time I really played organized sports, and it was just a different world for me. And I really enjoyed the competition and making friends and being a part of a group. And, my family's just kind of full of people who've always loved sports and loved that community. So it was pretty easy to get involved in that. And also I'm pretty tall. So it's like, oh, this is what you're going to be doing.
Were there any sports in particular that you excelled at?
I'd say.
Are you just good at everything?
No, well, I was decent at everything. I'd say the thing I was best at was probably volleyball, which I played in college. Basketball, I wasn't as good as my parents were, but I was just a good teammate. And I worked really hard. So I think that was helpful there. I could have been better at track, but it was so hot in the summers that I never wanted to do summer track. So I just did it like for school. And then I was like, this is enough.
It's a good reason to not be good at track, right? It's too hot out there.
I like indoor sports. I'm just a baby that way.
I hear you. So you decided to go to Clemson, right?
Mm-hmm.
What led to that decision?
So like freshman year, I was like, I'm going as far away as possible. I'm going to Hawaii. I'm going to California. I'm getting out of here. And then you start growing up and realizing like, oh no, I really like being around my family, and I like when they can come to stuff, and I like being able to go home. So I narrowed my focus and really wanted to be not in Georgia, but near Georgia. And I felt like Clemson was a good place for me because there wasn't a lot of people from my high school going there like there are now, since obviously we've gotten better at football and stuff. And it was only like 2.5 hours away from home. So it was an easy trip for my family, easy trip for me. And the campus is beautiful. The people were really nice. And it just felt good being there.
Did you play? And you said you played volleyball at Clemson?
Yeah, I played volleyball at Clemson for 2 years, and then I realized that I was not going to go pro. And when you're playing D1 anything, your time is not your own. So I started having those conversations of, well, what are you going to do after school? And you need to intern, and you need to do this, and you need to get involved. And I made the choice to stop playing volleyball and start kind of focusing on life after and actually enjoy college in a different way, because volleyball has 2 seasons, your fall, which is the one that really matters, and then spring. So you're like a student, but you're not a student. You don't really get to be involved in everything. And yeah, I just wanted to have a college experience.
And when you said that you started thinking about life after school, right? What, in your mind at the time, did you know what it was that you wanted to do, or did you just decide that you were going to explore? How did that go down?
So I knew that I liked sports, and not just like, oh, I like watching. I was like, I like being involved in sports. So I started working with the program. It's called IBTE, and it's like how Clemson gets money donated from different people around and stuff. So it's like I Pay 10 a year is what it was founded on, and it gives money to all the different sports teams. So I started working with them. And then I was like, okay, well, this is cool. What other sports things are out there? So I just kind of started looking for internships that were within the sports realm, but I didn't know for sure what I wanted to do or what was even out there.
And so what was your first internship, or what did you do after you graduated from school?
After I graduated, I was actually, or I think before that, I did a internship at Career Sports and Entertainment, here in Atlanta.
Okay.
And I worked on they have a bunch of different things that go on out of that office. But what I was doing were the football classics for the HBCUs. So it was during a time when social media was kind of just picking up on the business side. And there wasn't even Instagram yet. So we were just Facebook and Twitter, and it was just a way to tell people how to buy tickets and where these events were and how to, what hotels are being sponsored and stuff like that. So what ended up happening is, because I was younger, they'd be like, oh, just run Facebook for us, run Twitter for us, and then also do these other things for these different activations that we're having. So that's what really kind of got me started with social media on the business side of things.
No, absolutely. And then following that, I know you got to spend some time with us working Adidas events, right?
Yeah, and that was really awesome too, because I always grew up like playing in volleyball tournaments, but I never really saw how those things came together. It literally is just like, oh, I show up, I play at 8 a.m. and this is what it is. But working with you guys and seeing like all the effort that goes into putting an event together, all the different pieces, how the athletes fit into that, how coaches fit into that, how media fits into that, and promotion and covering the event, was just really eye-opening and gave me a different perspective of what some of my options were.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, I hadn't thought about this until just now. I think you probably got to see Zion when he was very, very young.
Yeah, back in the day before he was Zion.
Before
Xanos and all the things they're calling him now.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think before he was really a big deal, you were working those events with us. So just it's crazy how things have evolved from there. But so you worked with us on Adidas, and then following that, like at that point, did you have a target job that you were looking for or still exploring? Where was your head at that point?
Still exploring. I had interned with the Atlanta Track Club, and they put on a lot of different races around Atlanta, like 5Ks, 10Ks. They have the Peachtree Road race, which is like the biggest 10K in the country. So I had a friend working with them. She's like, oh, come do this. So I did that for a while. And then I kind of got away from sports because I was just trying to figure myself out. So I went back to coaching volleyball. I was doing that for high school and then also for travel ball. I got my real estate license. And then I was like, I don't think I love these things. And that's when Summer League kind of came into my life at a very opportune time.
Well, let's talk, before we jump into Summer League, I want to talk about coaching volleyball. What was that like?
It was really good. I did a lot of different ages, so I could just kind of see what I wanted. I was a assistant at Georgia State.
Okay.
So I got to see what the college life was like. I also did club volleyball for freshmen, like ninth graders, seniors. I coached high school, like JV and varsity. And I loved helping the girls, more so on the amateur side. I just didn't feel like I was removed enough from college to really be as effective as I wanted to on the collegiate side, because a lot of that is more life coaching and how do we get you to kind of figure out who you are and get you prepared for the real world. Mm-hmm. And I was still figuring my stuff out. So I was like, this is kind of strange. Like I shouldn't be running into players at like the same places I go out at.
Right. What, and did you like coaching?
Yeah, I loved it. I had some really great people that I worked with. My players were always great. And yeah, I think that's one of the things that I miss the most right now is just having that sense of team and really feeling like you're helping bring in the next generation of female athletes.
Mm-hmm. And if I understand correctly, you guys actually did really well, right?
Yeah. I was fortunate enough to have players that always bought into what we were trying to accomplish. And we would usually do really well in regionals, make it to the nationals, make some noise in nationals. Haven't won a national championship, but I see that happening in the future. So we'll see with the right group.
Okay. So you want to go back to coaching at some point?
Yeah, it's not something that I ever want to fully have out of my life. I think for right now, you just go through grind mode seasons where you need to focus all your energy on certain things. And then once you grow and figure out balance, you're able to incorporate some of those passion projects and stuff back into your schedule.
Right. No, and I'm sure you actually get a lot out of being a coach, right? I'm sure there's a number of different skills that you develop as a result of being a coach. Now, did you always have an interest in coaching, or is that something you were just kind of thrown into?
No, I always described myself as like Charlie of the Mighty Ducks.
Yes.
When you talk about what type of player you are, because I never really cared about, I need to be the one scoring. Like I cared about how everyone else was doing, how I could add to that. I had more of a defensive mindset on stopping the other team and then helping my teammates excel. Like I got more excited when my teammates had great games versus I did. And I feel like I just see the game differently, from a coach's perspective anyway, which I probably get from my dad. So yeah, coaching just felt really natural.
I love that reference, by the way. Mighty Ducks, one of my favorite movies as a kid. Now, so Summer League, let's talk about Summer League, right? So one of the reasons that you were brought to Summer League is, as we mentioned before, you worked some of our Adidas events at the time. You did a fantastic job, and you got your way into an internship at Summer League. Talk a little bit about what that was like.
It was interesting because I was old compared to everyone else.
How old were you when you came in?
I was 24, 25, right? Because it was 5 years ago at this point, the first one.
Yeah, I don't remember, to be honest. I mean, I never looked at you as being old, so I don't know.
I Nobody ever knows how old I am. Like everyone just assumes that I'm younger. I probably need to start wearing more makeup, like dressing more maturely. But yeah, I think I was like 24 maybe. And so like everyone else is around like 19, 18 in school or going to school, that type of stuff. But I had already graduated and I was in that what's next. As I mentioned, I had tried like a bunch of random things. And I was like, I really just want to get back into sports. And before that, I was freelancing at Turner Sports doing some editing for and making highlights for basketball games and stuff for NBATV and TNT, which comes out of that
Okay.
building. So I knew that I wanted to be back in sports. I just didn't know what that path was going to be. I knew marketing wasn't something I really wanted. I had tried that in some internships, but I was like, all right, I love TV and I love sports. So let's just see how we can combine those and what opportunities lie there. And luckily, you guys gave us options of different things to do. I was doing social media and I actually got hooked up to some of the Turner people who I didn't know already just because we worked in different parts of the building. And that relationship really started my career.
So talk about what that was like some of the responsibilities you had as an intern at Summer League working for Turner.
So really they trusted me because I had a background in already doing social media. So I helped them do some of their sales executions. So like Adidas had paid them to get pictures of players wearing Adidas shoes for Snapchat. So going and getting pictures of those, just setting the scene for the day because NBA TV has a bunch of games. So it's promotion, letting people know who's on, getting people hyped to watch the games, making sure they see which draftees are playing where. And they really let me do a lot. And then on the Summer League side of stuff, we're all responsible for helping anyone who needs help, directing people to where they need to go, helping keep the arena clean, and just making sure that things are flowing and going.
And as far as managing the social media channels for NBA TV and Turner, that's somewhat what you're doing these days, right? From a full-time perspective?
Yeah, so I started with doing that, and then it was funny. I was back in Atlanta after Summer League, and we were filming KG Area 21. So I went just to go look and like see what was going on because I was there working late, and I ran into one of the women that I had worked with, and she was like, "Hey, how you been? You're around?" And I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "Well, we have this job that's open. I want you to meet my boss." And I was like, "All right." And honestly, we had like lunch, and then apparently that was an interview, which I was not aware of. And then had a couple more conversations with some other people, and that landed me the job. But I never would have gotten that had I had not interned at Summer League.
And that was how long ago?
I think I'm on year 5.
Wow. Crazy how time flies.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your gig. Let's talk about that a little bit. So you actually help manage the Facebook, Twitter, IG, and Snapchat for NBA TV, right? That's part of your responsibilities?
Yeah, so when I first got the position, that was essentially it. It was running that, and what it is making sure that the network is being supported. So all the shows that are going to be on there and everything that we're doing, that those are being promoted, that we're clipping off highlights of the best shows and the best features. That we're helping direct people to NBA.com because that's one of our properties as well. And then also telling the story of what's going on in the NBA. So you'll see highlights coming out of those pages, features, and then some like cool franchises that we came up with. And that's what I did up until like right before All-Star. And then now I help, and part of that is also covering games live. So we'll travel to like our biggest games and give people like some behind the scenes of like warm ups and like this interview that's happening and these different things that the players are doing just so they can get another perspective. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
still doing that part where I travel and cover that way. But now I'm shifting my focus a little bit from less the day to day of NBA TV all the time to adding in some of our other brands that we cover. Because out of our social room, we run NBA TV, NBA on TNT, Shacked in a Fool, March Madness, and then we help out with creating different content for shows. And then now we're getting into podcasting. So it's a lot, and we just need to shift my focus a little bit to help get all those things organized from like a talent and PR perspective on the social side.
Right. No, it sounds super interesting. Now, for those people who have no idea what it's like to, cover an event or to work social for an organization, can you walk through kind of what your day-to-day is like, how it's decided what content are going to be put through the channels? Just give a quick little brief overview of what that's like from a professional standpoint.
Yeah, so every day you have a bunch of different people that you need to talk to figure out what content is going on and what channels and what shows and like all this stuff is happening. So the mornings, a lot of that is just like organizing. In the beginning of your week, it's laying out the rest of the week. Because I don't think, or maybe people do realize, we schedule out a lot of the content that goes out during the day just because it helps things get done easier. So you'll have like a graphic designer, and let's say we have a show talking about, we did Magic Johnson and Isaiah Thomas, right? They had like a sit down interview. So we needed clips from that show. So you have to coordinate with that producer. We needed graphics highlighting like big moments in that. So we had our designers make those. And then we need to know when it's airing and all that stuff. So we're covering those things. And then if we have a game that night too, then it's also having promotional posts on where to watch the game, how to watch, directing people to our app as well. And the big thing is that you don't just want to tell people like, watch this now, right? Because that's boring and nobody wants to engage with that content. So it's figuring out different ways to tell a story. So let's say it's OKC versus the Heat, right? And those teams doing really well, and then they're both pretty fashionable teams. So maybe we lean into like Chris Paul and Shea, their like outfits versus like Jimmy Butler and Tyler Hero, right? Like you look at different ways to kind of, I guess, pit people against each other or just show the differences between them. Mm-hmm. Besides just highlights all the time.
Sure. I mean, it's all about telling stories, right? Now, you mentioned you guys would meet every Monday and kind of lay out what the content looks like, what the strategy will look like, everything that's coming up. Like, who are the people at the table in that meeting?
So it's actually like a huge meeting because there's just so many different departments that go into it. So you have representatives from NBA.com. We have basically we essentially have like a production agency within our company called CSSU. So you have all those people. You have the producers of all the shows. You have a bunch of different people on social. You have the ADs, you have the PAs, you just have everyone who makes a show or makes content for .com or makes content anywhere, because everybody wants their stuff promoted. It's hard to have a release, like a PR release on everything. So social is a good space for a lot of people to be able to promote what they're doing. So like the big stuff gets like PR releases and things like that. But maybe the stuff that we do all the time, but just as we're doing something special that day, that's something that we would run on social, like on Twitter, as just like a, hey, heads up, this cool thing is happening.
Now, is it the job of the person in your position that actually decides what goes out on a day-to-day, or who actually makes the decision for what the content is that's going to go out through the different channels?
Yeah, it was me, but it was me under the guardrails of I'd had a bunch of conversations when I got the job of expectations. Mm-hmm. What are the big things? What are things that work for both, right? Because just because something does well on TV, it doesn't mean it's going to do well on social. So a lot of my job was making things socially friendly as well.
Now, what does success mean on social for you guys? And what does socially friendly mean?
So We have a wonderful insights team within our social media team that really helps us to guide what kind of content we create and how we use our resources, down to like us figuring out what size you want to make a graphic, or the size you want to cut your video in, or the duration that people watch a video, or the colors that people are attracted to. Like, we test literally all those things to get the highest engagement rate. So you want views, you want people liking, commenting, and sending it to their friends. So as many different ways that we can get people to interact with our content, the better it is. And then aesthetically, you want it to all feel like it lives in the same place. Like, I like all of our content to look like it's related to each other, even though it doesn't all look exactly the same.
Absolutely. No, that's phenomenal. It sounds like, just having an insights team makes your job a little bit of an art and a science, right? You have the data, what works, but at the same time, there's like that sense of feel, right? I'm sure there are times where you've executed something that may go a little bit against what the data says, because you just know that something would probably work.
Yeah, and that's worked the opposite way too. But really, like, you just have to try new stuff because it's social, right? So everything is constantly changing. If it's not an Instagram algorithm, it's the way that Twitter is responding to these different things now. So we try stuff. We test a lot of things to see if it works or doesn't work. And then, because there was this one time that I had this like brilliant idea. So I thought of doing like recaps of every playoff game, right? It took so long to do them. They were so time consuming for our team. They needed so many resources, and they just flopped. Like, people just did it like, but if we didn't do that and didn't try it out, we wouldn't have known that. And we would have kept trying like these things that were longer and heavier lifts, as opposed to giving people quick answers to what they want to know. Who won? Who lost? Did anyone have a big game?
Isn't that amazing though, how that works? Like, I'm sure at the time you were so sure that it was just good, that franchise or those campaigns were going to be a huge success, and then you come to realize they're not. And I think, that's really the beauty of social and just digital advertising in general, is just the cause and effect of everything. Right. And sometimes you're pleasantly surprised at how well something worked, and sometimes you're shocked. It just, wow. Like, I was convinced that was going to be amazing.
Yeah. Like, the simplest things we'll put together, we'll just be like, oh, let's just do this. And it'll just come out and people will love it. And we're like, what? And then there'll be things that we like labored over and put so much energy into that just doesn't resonate. And I love the real-time feedback. It's definitely helpful. And it's really how we show our value, because now you can make money on social media. So we have a sales team as well. And they use those insights too. Like, hey, this brand sees you guys did this thing and we pitched that it's performing really, really well, and they want to add this insight to it. Like, all right, cool.
So you mentioned real-time feedback. Let's dive into that a little bit. Like, what are some of the tools that you use on a day-to-day?
So we were just acquired by AT&T. So we changed what we use kind of depending on what our parent company uses. But really, it's just like a program that tracks everything. And then you can put the different content into different buckets. So we have these things called hero graphics, right? And that's just letting you know, like, so-and-so had a great game, and then their stats for that game. So we'll have all those and compare them to each other to see what players perform better, what teams perform better, what information people want to know. And for those different programs, Insights uses them mostly, and then we have like meetings. I think we usually do like every 2 weeks, just to talk about like what new things we want to test, new ideas we want to have, and just what things we need to do more or less of, because then it's just smarter on how we spend our time.
Right. Absolutely. So for anybody who'd be interested in getting the role that you moved into following Summer League, what are some of the skills that you'd encourage them to develop, or tools that you'd encourage them to learn to know? Like, what does the ideal candidate look like for somebody who is stepping into your role?
I think it needs to be someone who, for my specific job, you need to enjoy basketball, right? Like, it's hard. There's other jobs that you can have within social and not really be passionate about the NBA or like whatever you're covering. For my specific role, you need to love basketball because it was part of my job to know who was playing every night, what was going on, because we covered the totality of the league. So you really needed to be invested in that. I would say you needed to be doing something sports related, or it doesn't even necessarily have to be sports related, but you needed to be really involved in something in college. Sports preferred, just so I think people don't understand the hours that go into jobs like this. So you like somebody who understands the grind and isn't like, oh, I'm 9 to 5 and then I leave and then I don't check my phone because I'm not at work. That's not it. And you want a self-starter. You want someone who's confident and who's also a really good team player, because it is such a collaboration to make everything work. Like, not one person could run the NBATV stuff by themselves. You need a team of people who support you, who you support, and who you can leverage all their different skill sets and abilities to really get things done.
Right. No, and you know what? Something just dawned on me. You mentioned the 9 to 5 thing, right? Which is a total joke for anybody working in sports, but especially when it comes to social, right? I mean, when do the games happen? After 5 o'clock, right? For the at night, right? Which means if you are involved in any sort of like real-time communications, like that's your reality. And like you said, just being passionate, you must be passionate about it, because if you're not, that gets tiring. That gets tiring very, very quickly. So you just, a couple of weeks ago, you came back from All-Star Weekend. Can you talk a little bit about, some of your roles and responsibilities while you were out there and some of the things that you did?
Yeah, so All-Star was really great. Chicago was amazing. I loved it. Probably one of the best All-Stars in my opinion. And for me, we did a partnership with the Obama Foundation. So we actually had them taking over our NBA on TNT Instagram stories. So my job was really to we had a different person for each of the 3 days. So my job was to take them around, show them the different activities and activations and games. So if you were with me for Rising Star, we went to Rising Star practice, and then you would cover like the practice, their warm-ups, like how they're shooting around, all that stuff. And then going to the game, getting arrivals, getting warm-ups again, all the stuff that goes into the feed, having them talk about their experiences. So I helped do that. I helped get some stuff for NBATV for the different shows that we had during that time as well. And then we also did some shows on Twitter that are called NBA Twitter Live. So my responsibilities were making sure the talent that we had on set were helping to promote when they were on air, actually helping get talent to set. Like, the most stressful thing was that Candace Parker was a judge for the slam dunk contest and then needs to go out, up and around like 3 levels of the arena to get to our Twitter Live set. So my job was like to grab her off the stage as soon as she was done with slam dunk contest in that one situation and make sure she got to set. And we had like 8 minutes to do so.
Wow.
So it was really, we made it. I was like, excuse me, move, like playing security. But it was great because she got to then go from that to just talking about the slam dunk contest, and because it was controversial, obviously. So getting to speak on that, how they made their decisions, and like talk about the weekend in general. And it was a really good show.
Awesome. Now, I want to go back to something related to the channels. How do you decide, or can you tell the audience what good content looks like for each of the channels, right? Facebook, Twitter, IG, Snapchat. Like, obviously the same content doesn't necessarily get regurgitated across all of the channels. Can you, for somebody who might be new to social, can you break that down for us?
Yeah, so we put everything on Twitter just because since it is linear and everything and chronological, you can just kind of put whatever whenever, and it doesn't usually hurt you. Instagram, what we figured out is that when you do too much, you end up competing with yourself. And we don't know exactly how the algorithm works. I don't know if anyone does. But what we did test are like how many pieces are too many pieces to put out. And like our best of the best goes on Instagram, right? Like you don't want to be flooding or trying to flood that timeline. And then for Facebook, what we realized is like people like a little bit longer form of content there. So let's say we have a video that's a feature, right? We might put the full thing on Facebook, up to like 3 minutes on Twitter. And then depending on if we want to do like an IGTV of how good it is and how it's cut, we can put that same 3-minute piece on Instagram, or we can cut it down a little bit if we feel like the most effective parts are not within that 3-minute block. And then for graphics, we put kind of everything everywhere. But yeah, each platform has like weird little nuances, and it just depends on your audience. Like these aren't standard rules for everyone. I'm sure that like e-news does things completely different because of the age range, the demo, and just what your audience really wants to consume. Like we also think about the timing that we post things as well. It's better to get certain things out at night when it's happening and you want to look at what's trending on Twitter and be a part of that conversation. But sometimes if it's just a recap, you can put that out in the morning because it doesn't hurt anything. And for those, if it's like a West Coast game, all the East Coast people probably fell asleep. So you'll get to see in the morning like, oh, AD had this many last night and they lost, but it was important because X, Y, and Z.
I love it. Morgan Mitchell giving a masterclass.
Slightly.
That was great. Now, so how many, I mean, if you can give the audience an idea of how many posts do you have any idea how many posts per day are being put out across the channels that you're responsible for? Have you ever counted?
Honestly, that information lives somewhere, just not in my mind. If I had to guess, so let's do it like this. Every day is a different day. If it is an NBATV day and we have 2 games on our network, usually we have at least 2, 4, 6. So even before the games start, we try to do things like every couple of hours on our platforms. Are you talking about for each platform or just one platform?
We can go each platform.
So Instagram will probably be the least amount of content for a day. We'll have some promos that'll go up on IG stories. So if it's 2 games, you get 2 of those. Then we'll have some content that we created that's like a cool way to promote. So we'll probably have 4 of those pieces if there's 2 games at night. Probably have some cool stats for the night before. So that's another like 2 to 3 posts. And that leads you into the games. And then we do game highlights from every single game. So it's not like, oh, these games are on NBA TV. That's all we're covering. If it's a 6-game night, we're covering all 6 of those games. So then that's dependent on how good the highlights are because we don't want to force a storyline that doesn't exist.
Right. You're looking for engagement.
Yeah. So you can get in a night, we'll probably try to get less than 10 on Instagram. Twitter, I don't even know. We probably do 20 in a day easily if it's like if there's a bunch of games that night. Mm-hmm. But I'd have to talk to somebody who knows more than me.
No. Hey, it's good. I'm just the weird questions that come to my mind, you know. I mean, but you just worked All-Star, right? You've been a part of Summer League. You're going to be a part of the draft. How soon before these events are you planning for them?
Oh my goodness. We started talking about All-Star in November, I think. December? Mm-hmm. No, November. We started talking about All-Star in November for the February event. And it also depends on how big the event is and all that stuff too. And if we have to travel and all those other things. For draft, we'll probably start worrying about that. We start looking at it around March Madness, just because you start kind of seeing different names emerge. So then you kind of start figuring out what those storylines are going to be, and around like draft combine time, since those are different things that you're going to have to talk about as well, and the lottery. So probably around March is when we'll start really going harder on draft. But then you also are worried about playoffs too. So you like lightly touch draft, you really focus on the playoffs. And then as soon as playoffs usually get into like Eastern and Western Conference finals, then you can focus a little more on draft because it's less games that you're covering.
Right. That makes total sense. So last question related to your current job. What have been the keys to your success thus far?
I would say formulating good relationships. I'm not the best networker ever in terms of like just walking up to someone being like, hi, nice to meet you. But I am good at when I do meet you of being nice, making sure I'm on top of my stuff, being honest instead of like giving people the runaround. And I'd say like formulating good relationships because a lot of my job is knowing who to ask what questions to. And if you don't have good relationships with people, you can't just hit someone up and be like, hey, I have this question. Would you be able to answer? Do you know who would be able to? If people don't like you, they're just not going to really want to help you. And that's in every industry, not just sports.
Right.
Yeah. And just being on top of your stuff. Like when someone asks you to do something, if it's within your power to do it in a timely manner. If you're able to be direct and not waste people's time, especially because everyone is so busy, that's a good thing. Not waiting till the last minute if it's possible. And yeah, I think just communication has been a really big thing for me. And that was something I had to learn how to do effectively to really feel like I had a good handle on what my job was.
So you mentioned communication. If you care to share, is there anything that you feel like you had to learn to get to where you need to be be a better communicator?
Yeah, I had to learn that a lot of that my time wasn't the most important necessarily. I think when you're first starting out, you get so freaked out when someone asks you to do something, you're like, oh my gosh, it needs to be done right now, and this and da da da, and whatever. Okay, you're probably realistically bottom of the totem pole for that person that day. So you need to figure out how to do all the other things surrounding that request before we get there, or figure out how to make it less of an ask so that you get things done faster.
Right. It's good advice. It's very good advice. So you are, at this point, you have your own show, right? Is it, it's called the No Timeout Show?
Yeah, me and my co-host Marcel Bowie, we do that, which has been a lot of fun and a good outlet. Not associated with like my day job, but just something that we're really passionate about.
And what made you decide to do it?
So there was a lot of things that we loved about basketball that we weren't really covering on like our big shows and stuff. So me and Marcel just kind of got together and we're like, what do we like to talk about? We like to talk about sports. So we mostly focus on basketball, but we also talk about football and baseball, like whatever is relevant. We like to talk about fashion, and then like he's super passionate about music and is also an artist. So we just wanted to talk about things that influence our culture. And Atlanta is such a big hub for all those things combining. It just feels like there's always something going on here. There's always people here. Guys come here in the off season, like the Hawks, whether they're good or bad, like even with Trey and Quavo, like it's such a culturally relevant thing that we just wanted a space to kind of talk about the different sides of the NBA that we love besides just the stats of things.
Right. And so how often are you guys doing the show? And where can people find you?
So normally we try to go weekly, but we've had some schedule conflicts just because honestly, like it ebbs and flows on how busy you are during the season. And then it's not like you can skip work to go record your own show. So weekends are what we really try to do. But you can find us at No Timeout Show, and we are on Instagram primarily and also Facebook. Just because for Instagram, we started putting our entire episodes on our No Timeouts page, and keeping those under 10 minutes, because what we realized was like, nobody really wants to hear my 30-minute show, especially if we can condense it down. People like quick content when it comes to having to watch something. So yeah, we did that to figure that out.
Now, have you always liked being on camera, or is that something that you've just recently taken a shot at?
I always liked it just because I feel really comfortable talking to people and I like connecting with people and it's fun. It doesn't feel like work. So that's why it's kind of always been like a fun thing. But I didn't want to go the like news route, move to a small town and all that stuff. So I've always just kind of done it for fun. Like even with you guys for some of the Adidas events, like I've interviewed some players like post game and some coaches at halftime, stuff like that, just because I genuinely enjoy it. But I haven't thought about like stopping everything and going full and trying to make it a career.
Right. So this is just something you're doing for fun at this point.
Right. Unless someone decides to pay me a lot of money for it, then I can.
Hey, it'll probably happen. It'll probably happen. I love it. How many episodes have you guys done?
We're on season 4. So
okay.
Goodness. Yeah.
So I am late to the party.
Well, we started and we also have a YouTube page. So every episode is on YouTube. Our newest and latest ones that are way better production wise are on Instagram and Facebook. But yeah, when we first started, we had like just one camera. We would just talk really loud. The lighting was off. We were just kind of going off the cuff of whatever we thought people would kind of like. And then we started actually investing in it. So now we have a camera person that does lighting. We have an audio guy. We have a producer. We have a space with a backdrop.
Okay. So want to shift gears a little bit. Do you have any routines or habits that you think anybody who, might be listening might be able to benefit from learning from?
Probably if you want to work in the NBA, just knowing what's going on, the storylines. So when I get up in the morning, I check Twitter just to see what's happened while I was sleeping, because there's always something. I have alerts on all the breaking news guys and girls, making sure you know what's going on in the WNBA, if there's stuff happening with different CBAs and all that. I would say just knowing the league. It's probably the biggest thing for me, just because like that's a bulk of the conversation is what we're covering. So
Sure.
If you don't know what's going on, you're just super behind.
How much time every day do you think you put in the morning to get caught up?
I stay up pretty late just because I want to not have to do all that in the morning all the time. So I usually stay up until like 1:30 or 2. So I get a bulk of things out of the way then. And in the morning I check probably about like 20 minutes.
Okay.
Once you get the hang of it and once you know what type of stuff matters and what you're looking for, it's not like you need to put 2 hours in every morning into scouring the internet. It's like you go check the scores of every game. You look at the standings, you look at box scores. Now that we're headed to playoffs, that's like a big thing. So who's in what position, how many games in front or behind are people, and looking at different teams' injuries so you know how that could affect their next couple of games.
Right. Yeah, no, it's just always fascinating to me just how different jobs require just a different level of daily prep, right? So I talked to Dave DeFore from The Athletic recently, and he does, 3 podcasts a day, right? Hour-long podcasts, I believe, a day. Right. And he was breaking down just how much time he has to put in every day. So just always fascinating to really just get an understanding of what the time commitment from a research perspective is.
Yeah. And also for us, we have great researchers that we work with. So I get a lot of emails, like whenever there's breaking news, even if you think you're like, oh, I probably missed it. You didn't, because they're sending an update on this thing happened so that everybody is aware. So stuff in the morning, you just want to get a good base on what happened the night before. And then throughout the day when you're just at work, oh gosh, so-and-so is out for 2 weeks, or this thing just happened. This coach just said this, we're all talking about it and we're all on our phones more than we probably should be. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
So a few final questions here, if you have the time.
Of course.
What's one piece of advice you received in your career that you'd want to pass along to the next wave of talent?
I think I was really stressed out with trying to figure out what I wanted to do. So what I was told is you don't have to know what you want to do, but you do need to know what you don't want to do. And that allowed me to keep my options open to exploring and being welcoming to new challenges and new opportunities. But also, once I cross something off my list of like, oh, I don't like that, then you don't have to return to it. So once you figure out like, hey, I like this industry, just try different jobs within that space. And once you know you don't like something, then you can try the next thing. Because what I really learned with being a Turner is that with age and with lifestyle change and all that becomes or turns into what you like or don't like and what fits your lifestyle. So the same job you had at 23, you might not want that job at 30 or 50 or whatever. But if you know what you don't want to do, then you can start tailoring your career to get to what these new things are that allow you to have whatever balance you seek, whatever challenges keep you motivated, and just kind of keep you happy.
Very, very wise words. Have you ever had a major screw up or failure? And if you can talk about it, what did you learn from it?
Definitely. I think we all have had a couple.
Oh yeah.
Basically, like it was all about communication and being prepared and being organized and understanding that not everyone is on the same page all the time. So if you're leading an execution, you need to be responsible for everything from top to bottom. And also being able to take responsibility when it's not. I think the worst thing that someone can do is mess up and try to hide it. Because number one, everyone always finds out everything. That's just how this industry works. And then number two, it just feels like you're hiding things and that you're being sneaky if you don't just admit what's going on. And for most of my big mistakes, it was stuff that I could fix, but I just needed to let people know like, hey, I messed up, this thing happened, but this is how I'm going to fix it. And this is what's happening moving forward. Because if they were able to help, then that was great. And then I wasn't like on this island, just scrambling and sweating and being freaked out. But if you come to someone with a plan of like, hey, this thing went bad, but this is how I'm going to correct. And this is how it's going to be moving forward. They look at you and think that you are responsible. Then you can talk about the mess up later, but it's not this like, oh, I'm angry at you. It's like, well, now you know to troubleshoot for that in the future.
Right. Absolutely. Now, here's a very, very important question. I have heard that you are big into karaoke. Do you have a go-to song that you like to perform when out doing karaoke?
I super love karaoke, which is so weird, but I love it. I have a couple.
Okay.
So I really like Usher, Love in This Club, and I also rap the Jeezy verse, whether it's on the monitor or not.
Okay.
I really like City High, What Would You Do? But I really only do that if I have a partner with me because it's a lot of song to handle by yourself. And then I like doing the Fugees, but it's like a 6-minute song, so I don't do that one often.
Love it.
So Love in This Club is probably my go-to.
Okay. All right. How often do you go do karaoke?
Not as much as I probably should. So in college, we had karaoke literally every Thursday. So like all my friends would go. And then through the real world, it's mostly like for people's birthdays or if you're traveling to a city that there's not a lot to do, then it's like, oh, let's just go do karaoke. So I probably last time I did karaoke was on a cruise ship a couple months ago. And then before that, it had probably been like probably 6 months. I probably do it like once or twice a year.
I love it.
Maybe more depending on a good year.
At some point, I'm going to have to hear you do those songs. I won't ask you to do it for the audience, but at some point.
Oh, they'd be so mad.
At some point,
it's
I'm going to have to
more of a visual
witness this.
thing.
Yeah.
I'm more of a performer versus like a vocalist. So think of me as like a Cassie, Sierra when they were starting out. Like it's not going to sound like the most wonderful thing ever, but you're going to be committed to my performance.
I got it. I love it. I love it. Well, Morgann, thank you so much for your time. I know you're incredibly busy. Before we leave, do you have any requests or asks of the audience other than checking out your show?
Yeah, check out the show and make sure if you are in college applying for jobs that your resume is reflective of the job you are applying for, so that you can get into those doors and people can at least talk to you. We do not need to see all your babysitting experience and all those things. Just look at, unless it ties directly into like, I ran this household so I can run this company type of feel.
Yeah. Do you get a chance to see a lot of resumes?
Yeah, and it's just like a lot of kids I've talked to will be like, they'll have good experience and all this stuff. And I'm like, well, I didn't see your resume. And they're like, oh, well, I guess it didn't make it through HR because I got this email back. And they showed it to me. And I'm like, this is nothing that we discussed. Like, all these things that you have done are so great, but you didn't reflect that in this piece of paper, which I know is so hard to do. But yeah, those keywords that are on the job description, like, we're looking for someone who could do this, 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 this. Those words need to be in your resume to help you to be even seen for the job. And I want kids who deserve to be seen so that we can get them in the industry.
Can you share what some of those keywords are?
It's honestly different for each post, but like, let's say it's talking about organization or whatever else, or if it's like a basketball job specifically where you've done that. So just anything that it says for requirements, if you have any of those requirements or proficiencies, use those exact words in your description. Like, I'm proficient in Microsoft Excel and took these classes and I'm certified for this, or I worked in basketball assisting in the organization of the teams, blah, 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 blah. Just try to make it match up as closely as it can to the job description.
That's fantastic advice. I've never heard that advice before. So thank you for that. Finally, where can people find you?
My Instagram and Twitter pages are the same. It's the THE_Morgann with 2 N's.
Awesome. Well, I will make sure to link to those in the show notes. Morgann, thank you so much for taking the time, and hopefully we can do this again. Maybe at Summer League.
Serge, for you, anything, just let me know.
I appreciate you. Thanks again. And there you have it. I hope you enjoyed and learned a lot from my conversation with Miss Morgann Mitchell. You can find the show notes for everything we discussed at sportsbusinessclassroom.com/Morgann-Mitchell. And I've said it before and I'll say it again. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends, your family, and anyone you think might be able to get something out of it. And if you really got a lot of value, please take a few minutes to review the show on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And as always, we want to hear from you. We do the show for you. So if you have any follow-up questions for Morgann or myself, you can leave a comment on the site or send us your questions on social media by tagging us at Sports Business Classroom or at _Morgann with 2 N's. Big thank you to our sponsors, Sports Business Classroom and Hall Pass Media, and thanks again for listening. We will see you here next week on the Sports Business Classroom audio experience.